What are the best hunter exotics you need to dominate the endgame with? Stick around to find out. This is a PvE list, so don't go getting upset when I don't mention your favorite PvP exotic, you sweat lord. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back, and if you are new here, consider hitting that subscribe button. Before we get into the best exotics, let's quickly talk about how we can get them. The first method is going to your destinations and looking for this icon here. Once you find that icon next to a destination, click on the destination, and then you just look for that icon on the destination. So for today, it is the Concealed Void, and if you look at the bottom under the rewards, it says if solo you can get exotic legs, and each day the lost sector will rotate, but also your reward. It's not a guaranteed drop, so you'll have to farm it quite a bit, and your exotics are on a knockout system, so eventually you'll get the exotics that you don't have. If you don't see this symbol pop up right away, probably because you've never done that lost sector. So you just look, if you look close enough, you can see these little lost sector emblems on the map. There's typically one in each big zone. So if the lost sector was on this location and this wasn't popping up, I would just have to go to the lost sector I haven't beaten yet and beat it on normal, and then it should pop up after that. The other way is going to Neptune, and you are looking for the Vex Incursion Zone. Once you find the Vex Incursion Zone, you pretty much have to wait for a public event to spawn here. So it'll look like this, but it'll be in the zone with the Vex Incursion symbol, and you want to look at the rewards. So this one says rare gear. If it's up here, it can still have ones that say rare gear, but you're looking for one that says exotic. It'll say exotic gear Vex Strike Force like it does on here. The only stipulation to this is if the terminal overload rotates each day. So if it rotates into the Vex Incursion Zone, it'll lock it out for the day and public events will not spawn in that area. So wherever the terminal overload is, there's no public events in that area for the day. There is a Discord that tells you when the Vex Incursion is popping up. I don't have it, but if you do have it, you can drop it down in the comments below to help everyone else out. And that's currently how you can get all the exotics. The Vex Incursion will drop any exotic that you don't have until you get them all, and it's on a knockout system, and you can't target farm like a specific piece like arms or legs. It's just random. Jumping into our top 5 exotics, at number 5 we have the Renewal Grasps. These just recently got reverted to how they used to be, so now you can get grenade energy back very quickly and pretty much spam these grenades. It was either between the Renewal Grasps or the Young Ahamkara Spine. The reason I didn't go with the Young Ahamkara Spine is because they are getting nerfed next season, and we'll have to see how badly this affects them. The exotic perk for the Renewal Grasp, Depths of Dustfield. Your Dustfield grenades have a much larger effect radius. Allies inside Dustfield grenade take reduced damage, and targets inside the area deal reduced damage. So this is going to make our Dustfield grenade bigger. It's going to leave a little stasis crystal in the middle of it. It's going to slow targets that are inside the volume until they freeze, and those targets will also be doing reduced damage to you. And if you or allies are within that volume, you'll take less damage. Now we're going to push this even further with the Touch of Winter Stasis aspect, which is going to give enhanced functionality to our grenades. And for the Dustfield grenade, it's going to make it even bigger, and it's going to put a stasis crystal on impact. So the stasis crystal that it drops on impact will now be like a normal size stasis crystal. And to make sure we get our grenade back almost instantly, we're using a few things. First is Touch of Winter. Shattering a stasis crystal temporarily boosts your grenade recharge rate. Shattering additional stasis crystals increase the duration of this benefit. You can also utilize Whisper of Torment. You gain grenade energy each time you take damage from targets. And the main mod you want to be running is Grenade Kickstart. Whenever your grenade energy is fully expended, we gain grenade energy. Additionally, your armor charge is consumed and you gain additional grenade energy for each stack. So the way it works is we throw our grenade, it'll create a big volume on impact, and it'll release a stasis crystal. And since we threw our grenade, it's just going to straight up give us grenade energy back through Grenade Kickstart. And if we have any armor charges, it'll give us additional grenade energy back. And that grenade has a stasis crystal on impact, and if you shoot that crystal and destroy it, it's going to proc Whisper of Shards, which is going to increase your grenade recharge rate by a significant amount, so you pretty much get your grenade back instantly. So you can have multiple Dustfield grenades out at once. This is great for locking down areas, and it also helps with survivability. Moving on to number 4, we have the Omnioculus. This is probably my most used exotic for Grandmasters. The perk is Beyond the Veil. You gain a second smoke bomb charge, and you have damage resistance while invisible. When When you make an ally invisible, they gain damage resistance while invisible, and you gain melee energy. So the Omnioculus gives us 2 smoke bomb charges, plus if we combine that with Gambler's Dodge and we dodge near an enemy, it'll refund our melee ability. So we can essentially have 3 to 4 smoke bomb charges. The smoke bomb also weakens targets on detonation, and to make sure you always have invisibility uptime, you want to be using Vanishing Step. Whenever you dodge, you'll become invisible. It'll also recharge your smoke bombs, and you want to also be using Trapper's Ambush. Activate Quickfall to suspend your melee charge and dive to the ground, creating a large smoke cloud on impact, which then dissipates. Targets caught in the cloud are weakened and allies are made invisible. This is a must-have aspect when you're running the Omnioculus, because now we can just dive to the ground and make our allies invisible, and if we can make our allies invisible, it's going to refund some melee energy. So if you're running like a Grandmaster and you make both your teammates invisible, it'll give them that damage resist, and it'll also fully refund your melee energy. So you can constantly be making everyone invisible, and if you ever do run out, you can just dodge near enemies, which will make you invisible, and it'll refund more smoke bombs, so then you can use those to go invisible or make allies invisible. To push this even further, we're using Echo of Persistence. Void buffs applied to us, invisibility, overshields, and devour have increased duration, so we can stay invisible longer. And you can also run Echo of Obscurity. This just makes it easy, so you can like go invisible, run up to a champion and a Grandmaster, and you can get a finisher off on them, which will turn you invisible. So you have infinite ways of becoming invisible. This also helps in like tight situations. If the enemy's weak and you're pretty hurt, you can just get a finish off on them, go invisible, and get the heck out of there. The reason this is so good in Grandmasters is if you have one person running this, you can just constantly keep your team invisible for certain areas, and you can kind of be the fallback person. So if people start dying, you can easily get reses by going invisible with your dodge, running up, getting the res, and then you can smoke bomb both you and the ally to get out of there. Now the Omnioculus is very team oriented. You don't want to be running this solo, but if you do want a powerful void exotic or solo content, then we got you covered, because number 3 on our list is the Gyrfalcons. This has the perk See Me, Feel Me. Your void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible. When you are invisible and defeat a combatant while using a finisher, all of your weapons gain bonus damage, and your nearby allies gain a reserved overshield and improved class ability regeneration. These reserve overshields can be deployed by using a class ability. Now the first part of this is super useful, so you can use it with any void weapon. So as long as you go invisible and break your invisibility, your void weapon will have volatile rounds, which is very good for ad clearing. For this exotic, it's really fun to experiment with different void weapons. So to really make this one shine, we're going to be using Marksman Dodge to reload our weapons, just for that base cooldown on our dodge, and Vanishing Step. Dodging makes us invisible, so we can dodge, become invisible, which will proc the Gyrfalcons, which will make our void weapon do volatile rounds. And we're also using Stylus Executioner. Defeating a weakened, suppressed, or volatile target grants invisibility and true sight. After performing a Stylus Execution, our next melee attack while invisible weakens targets. So now we can dodge, become invisible, shoot an enemy with a void weapon, they'll become volatile, and then once we kill that enemy, since they're volatile, we'll become invisible again. So you can keep this combination just going infinitely, becoming invisible and making enemies volatile. Push this even further, you should use Echo of Persistence, make our invisibility last longer, and it's always good to have Echo of Obscurity. Finisher Final Blows grant visibility just for more invisibility and safety on finishers. Like I said, this one's a lot of fun to experiment with any void weapon, especially if that weapon has something like the stabilizing rounds, because now you can make the enemy you're shooting at volatile, and once you kill them, it'll spread volatile to all the nearby targets, which you can instantly kill them, and you can just proc invisibility super easily. At number 2, we have the absolute best exotic for clearing solo content, and that is the Assassin's Cowl. The armor perk is Vanishing Execution. Powered melee final blows grant visibility and restore a portion of health and shields. Finishers and final blows against more powerful targets increase the duration of the invisibility and the amount of health and shield restored. This is really fun to experiment with, so you can use it with pretty much any subclass. However, if you want to do harder content like solo lost sectors on legend or master, or even even Grandmaster Nightfalls or solo dungeons, you want to be utilizing this with the Arc subclass, because this is by far the best. Make sure to be running Gambler's Dodge. Whenever we dodge near enemies, it's going to recharge our melee ability. Combination Blow, a quick strike that temporarily increases your melee damage when defeating a target, stacking 3 times. Defeating targets with this ability also fully refills your class ability energy and restores a small amount of health. So we're going to get a lot of health and shield back from getting kills. It's going to refund our dodge, which our dodge is really important, so we can take advantage of our aspect, Lethal Current. After dodging, your next melee attack has increased lunge range, jolts the target, and creates a damaging aftershock. Damaging any jolted target with melee attacks also blind them. So whenever we dodge near enemies, it's going to refund our melee, it's going to give us increased range, and it's also going to jolt targets. And if we can kill an enemy with any of this, it'll make us invisible, it'll give us health and shields from the exotic. You also want to use Flow State. Defeating a jolted target makes you amplified, and we'll easily be defeating jolted targets with our melee. And while we are amplified, our dodge recharges more quickly, you are more resilient while dodging, and your reload speed is greatly increased. There's a couple fragments you can also use to push this even further, like Spark of Resistance. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage, make us tankier, so it's easier to get that melee off and get a kill and heal ourselves and go invisible, as well as Spark of Feedback. Taking melee damage briefly increases your outgoing melee damage. It's important to make sure you have a heavy-handed mod to make sure you create orbs of power whenever you get a powered melee final blow, and it's also really good to utilize a 1-2 punch shotgun. With hitting an enemy with every pellet in a shot increases melee damage for a short duration, so we can shoot a target and it's going to increase our melee damage even further. If you're struggling with lost sectors, I would highly recommend trying to at least get this helmet first, and then you can easily farm lost sectors. You can even go up to master lost sectors, and this build just makes the game on easy mode, and then it'll be really easy to just farm out all the other exotics on this list. Moving on to the number 1 exotic that absolutely dominates in-game PvE is the Star Eater Scales. If you're trying to pump out some top damage numbers in raids and even Grandmasters, the Star Eater Scales are going to allow you to really push those numbers. The armor perk is Feast of Light. You gain additional super energy from orbs of power you pick up. While your super energy is full, picking up an orb of power overcharges your super, causing you to gain a burst of healing when cast and a bonus to your super damage. At a maximum overcharge, you also gain an overshield. This stacks up to 4 times. So once you have your super, you got to get 4 orbs of power, which is not hard, especially if you have someone with a well on your team. And then at 4 stacks, we're going to get that maximum damage output for our supers. This overcharges all of our supers, so it's really good on any super, but there's 2 main supers that you definitely want to take advantage of, and that is the Gathering Storm from the Arc Strider class. This is going to hurl your arc staff forward, embedding it into surface or large targets and jolting nearby targets. It's going to do a lot of damage over time, and since we cast it instantly, we'll be able to utilize weapons, so you can use your rocket launchers, grenade launchers, swords, etc., while the super is also giving you that damage output. The other good super to utilize with these exotics is the Blade Barrage. This is another super where you vault into the air and unleash a volley of solar charge explosive knives. This is just going to give you an instant burst of damage, and since it casts instantly, you can use weapons during a damage phase. You can also utilize this for your roaming supers, and it'll give them bonus damage, but you won't be able to utilize weapons, so your overall damage output won't be as high. So you should definitely be using the Blade Barrage or the Gathering Storm. This is going to push those DPS numbers really high and allow you to be at the top of the DPS leaderboards for most encounters. So that's my list for the top 5 best hunter exotics to dominate the in-game PvE with. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Peace.